What's good, y'all? The Trae Young era in Atlanta is officially over. Last night, he got traded to the Washington Wizards. It is the first trade of the NBA season, so I do expect this to kind of start a trickle effect, and maybe we start to see a few more of those coming. But yeah, man, the writing on the wall has kind of been here all season between the contract situation, how Trae Young has been playing, the fact that he's been hurt and hasn't been playing. A lot of factors came into this, and ultimately what happened was he did get traded to the Washington Wizards in exchange for CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert. Very straight up deal. I don't think you guys need any graphics to understand that. Just Trae Young for those two players. That's it. Of course, as always, I'm going to be looking at this trade from both teams' perspectives, giving my thoughts, and then grading them. Before we get into that, though, I want to remind you guys to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. We're on the road to 500 subscribers, so hopefully we can hit that real soon. Without further ado, let's get right into this trade. And as always, we're going to start by talking about the team that got the best player in the deal. And of course, in this one, that is the Washington Wizards getting Trae Young. Getting Trae Young for essentially just salary filler, I think is incredibly good value. And I've talked about it a lot on this channel, but when you are a small market team and you are a rebuilding team, every move should be about value. It should be about making sure you're bringing in more into the door than what you're sending out. And in this trade, talent-wise, they 100% did that. Despite the record so far this season, I definitely think the Wizards are talented enough to at least try to win games. I know they started off like 3-20 or something crazy like that, and they've definitely started to hit a groove now, more recent. Bringing in Trae Young could definitely help that too. But I do think that they've rebuilded for not long enough, because obviously we've seen teams rebuild for years, but they've gone through it enough where I think they have enough talent on this roster to try to win again. And say what you want about Trae Young's play style and the heliocentric play style in general, but it is a pretty good floor raiser when you have a player that's able to create not only for himself but for everyone else, as good as Trae Young has been able to do in the past. It's going to just help your team, and especially on offense, just help get those easier shots. The number one thing I'm thinking about is the pick and roll / pick and pop with Trae Young and Alex Sarr. Year 2 Alex Sarr has looked like a completely different player offensively while still being such a good defender. He just looks so much more confident, a lot more calmer on offense. He definitely seems like the game has slowed down a little bit for him, and now if he's able to run a pick and roll with Trae Young, one of the best pick and roll players in the league, that would definitely help him get more of those easy baskets rolling, get that confidence, keep going up. Even beyond the floor raising, though, I mean, the Wizards just need more ball handling and creation in general. I know Bub Carrington had a pretty rough start to the year. He started to pick it up more recent, but then as soon as he started to look good, it seems like right at that same moment, Keyshawn George got injured and he's been like out of the lineup. So, he was a pretty good ball handler for this team before he got hurt. Trae Young would definitely help both of those guys by taking some of that load off of them. I also think this could be really big for Trey Johnson. Trae Young being able to set him up to get those open looks from 3. I don't think Trey Johnson has ever seen a shot that he doesn't like. He could be 10 feet behind the arc and he will still pull that shot. He has been really fun to watch just as a pure shooter. And again, having such a great playmaker like Trae Young be added to this roster, I think it'll be able to just let everyone get better shots. And I know we're a little bit of ways away from this because, right now the Wizards have the 29th ranked defense. But the idea of having Trae Young surrounded by guys like Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, if you even want to throw like a Justin Champagnie in that conversation, those bigger defensive-oriented players. I mentioned a little bit before that Alex Sarr and his defense, he has been a great rim protector so far this year. Even last year, his rookie season too, but this year he's looked great in that. And then having those wings like a Bilal or a Justin Champagnie to have that length and be running around the perimeter. Again, I'm not looking like this team's going to turn around and have like a top 15 defense now. They are towards the bottom of the pack, but just looking a few years into the future, maybe next year, year after that type of thing. But bringing it back to this season, right now the Wizards are 10-26, sitting at the 14th seed. I do think that it would be pretty hard to make it all the way back to the play-in tournament. They are 6.5 games back from the Bulls right now. Is it possible? Yes. Do I think they will start trending upwards and making their way up there? Yes. Will they end up making the play-in tournament, though? This season, I think they started off just a little bit too much in a hole for me to confidently say they could do that. I do think they will be very close. I think they'll finish probably around the 11th or 12th seed. But I do ultimately think next year will be the time we see the Wizards finally make the postseason again. And with all that being said, my grade for the Wizards in this Trae Young trade is a A-. Value-wise, like I mentioned, it's just terrific in my opinion. And then also just the player of Trae Young, I think he fits exactly what the Wizards want to do, and that's just take steps to get better. He's definitely a floor-raising player, so I definitely think that it's a good move. Now switching things over to the Hawks perspective, I know the first reaction, I'm sure, from a lot of Hawks fans, and maybe even just NBA fans in general, is to look at this trade package and say, that's it? Like, that's all you got back for Trae Young? But we've seen it time and time again where situations like this happen and the player's value just tanks immediately. You know, between the play that Trae Young has had this season, it's not been very good. The inability to play, he's only played about 10 or 11 games so far this year. And then also the fact that he ultimately did request a trade and it was known across the league Trae Young was not going to be on the Atlanta Hawks by the end of this trade deadline. All of that leads Trae Young's value and then also the leverage that the Hawks have just to plummet and go down and down and down. So I kind of understand why it's not some amazing, terrific, trade package. I wasn't expecting much. I did expect at least one pick or one young player. The fact that the Hawks got neither of that does kind of suck a little bit, but I also know what they were going after in this trade package. It's more of an addition by subtraction. You know, I'm not going to blame all of the Hawks struggles on Trae Young because I think that would be unfair. But obviously, everyone has seen the record thing where it's like, oh, they're 2-8 with Trae Young playing, but they're 15 and whatever without him playing. You know, they definitely have looked like a better team without Trae Young. Again, I'm not putting all of that on him, but there's that aspect of it. And then also, they were going after CJ McCollum's expiring contract. So being able to just clear off that money, Trae Young had a player option worth $45 million that he was going to accept more than likely. So they clear up $45 million essentially off of their books. And, you know, that makes me believe they are looking for moves in the future. I know Shams has reported that they still are interested in Anthony Davis, even though if they go after him, it would probably be an off-season trade. Freeing up that money, I'm sure, makes it easier. And, of course, if this Trae Young trade ultimately leads them to getting Anthony Davis, that changes things a lot on how you would look at this. More than anything, though, I think this is a stamp of approval for Jalen Johnson by the Hawks front office. I think this is them basically saying, like, you have our full confidence. We believe in you as our franchise player. And trading Trae Young just kind of makes it official. So, shout out to Jalen Johnson. He's had a terrific season. I definitely think that he, going forward, could be your best player on a competitive team. And of course, I'm saying all this like the Hawks literally got nothing in the trade, but, of course they did get stuff back. They got CJ McCollum. They got Corey Kispert. Again, CJ McCollum, I think they looked at him more as that expiring contract, but I do think while he's on the team for this season, he will be valuable as just another backup bench piece. I think as a ball handler, shot creator, and scorer all around, he will definitely be a addition to the Atlanta Hawks. Shout out to Keaton Wallace. He's been a pretty steady ball handler coming off the bench for them. There's levels to this in the NBA, though, and obviously CJ McCollum is a much better backup point guard for your team, definitely offensively at least. Shout out Keaton Wallace on the defensive end, just like his brother. But, CJ McCollum, I'm sure, will overtake that backup point guard position, and again, just add more ball handling, more scoring, more shot creation. And then looking at Corey Kispert, I've always been a pretty big fan of him. I felt like he got kind of overlooked as a role player just because he's been out in Washington throughout all of their bad years, basically. But he is a career 38% three-point shooter. He's up to around 40% on this year, and just all around has been super consistent as a movement shooter. He's got pretty good size, being 6'6" as well. So I think he'll be able to fit in perfectly here in Atlanta and definitely help them with some of their shooting struggles because, outside of a few different guys, there were some lineups that Atlanta would run where the spacing just wasn't that good. And then when you look at his contract, he's making about $13 million a year for this year and then for the next 3 years after that. I think that that's a good, fair value contract for his production if the Hawks want to keep him throughout, the entirety of his contract. but also I think it is a very valuable contract to be able to be traded. I'm sure that's why the Wizards included him in this trade, but it's a very movable contract. Again, for his value that he gives, I think it's a very fair contract. So I think this move all around was more about the Hawks keeping flexibility, but I do think that these players, at least for this season while they're on the roster, will also be able to help on the court. And now that the distraction of the Trae Young saga is gone, they added a little bit more depth to this roster as well. I do think the Hawks are going to start to slowly climb the standings a little bit. I don't know how high entirely they will go, but if I had to pick, I would say they would be closer to that 6th seed. Right now, they're in the bottom half of the play-in tournament. I definitely think they'll finish at least in the top half of that. Maybe they'll be able to escape it and reach that 6th seed. I don't really know. But around that 6 to 8 range, that's where I'm expecting for them. And then if I'm going to give the trade a grade for them, I'm going to give them a B-. I do think that the flexibility that they get contract-wise is very good, but also trading away your franchise player for no young guys or no draft capital at all definitely makes me question just a little bit. I wish they could have got a little more value back. At the end of the day, though, I don't think it's a terrible trade by any means. What do you guys think, though? Let me know in the comments below who you think won this trade. Do you think it was good for the Wizards? Do you think it was good for the Hawks? Do you think it was good for both? Good for none? Let me know in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave it a like, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. In the description, there's links to all my social medias, so make sure you follow me on all those to keep up to date with me. Catch y'all.